Hey everybody, welcome back to the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast. I am your host, as always, the Mex-Canadian, and we've got, once again, another hockey-heavy topic for you, because that's the only season we're talking about right now, because, once again, fuck the Pistons. So, today we're going to be talking about, obviously, the Red Wings and their last week, pretty much, which was a week. Detroit, if you guys don't know, played against Edmonton, Vancouver, and Calgary in the last week, and it didn't necessarily go their way. So we're going to get into it. First, I want to say Fabry did not play with the team in Edmonton or Vancouver. He became a brand new dad, so I will now dub the Daddy Fabry. Anyways, we're going to get into this shortly, but I do want to shout out my Twitter at @the_Mex-Canadian, because it is fantastic. And if you guys don't know, that is where I post any updates involving me and sometimes the podcast. If you guys want to follow the podcasts at RORBpod, that's where I post polls for the prospect reports. I post updates on the podcast itself, and just in general, that's where you can find anything related to the podcast. And like I said, my personal Twitter is just incredibly comical, and I want you guys to follow it because I think you deserve it. I also want you guys to follow it because clout. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care if you guys follow it or not. But regardless, we're going to get right into it with the Edmonton game. And boy, oh boy, was this a game. This is a game that I think the Wings were happy with, more or less, regardless of the outcome. Obviously, they're not happy with the outcome, but with how they played. But first, we got to start it off with Husso getting injured. This was Husso's first game back from his last injury that he got in early December, and he looked good. He looked sharp. He looked like Ville Husso of the first half of last year. But unfortunately, he got injured on the first goal, I believe, from Edmonton. He overstretched, and it just didn't look comfortable for him, so he's currently week to week. I hope he can come back soon. The poor man, he had a child, came back for like 2-3 weeks, got injured, came back, got injured again. This man just cannot catch a break. So, and he's looked good. Like, a lot of people keep shitting on Husso because of how badly he started this year, but I have yet to see any of those people acknowledge how good he started getting after he came back from Sweden, after he came back right before his injury. Like, he played really well right before his injury. Then, like I said, he got injured, came back. He looked fantastic almost in this game, yet he got injured again. So it sucks for Husso, and I do believe he's returning to form if he could just stay in the games longer. Yeah, Husso got injured, Lyon came in, and things got ugly. We're going to get into the goals too, obviously. The first one where Husso injured himself. I believe it was either the first or the second one, I can't remember, but regardless, Leon Draisaitl scored his 25th of the season. Then Ceci scored his first career goal, I think. It was his first of the season. And it was 2-0 Edmonton, 11 minutes in. But then on the power play, Debrincat nets his 19th of the season. It was a beautiful, beautiful feed from Kane. Making it 2-1 Edmonton going into the second. Going into the second, Evan Bouchard. By the way, I'm going to mention the assists on this too. The first one was Darnell Nurse and Ceci for Draisaitl. Second one on Ceci's goal was Nurse and McDavid. Evan Bouchard makes it 3-1 from Nugent Hopkins and McDavid. Then Joe Veleno gets his 10th of the season, becoming the 11th Red Wing to hit double-digit goals this season from Sprong and Debrincat. Kane nets his 8th of the season from Comfer and Perron, tying it 3-3 going into the third. Holloway gets his 3rd of the season from Bouchard and McDavid. Then Nugent Hopkins scores, making it 5-3 from McDavid and Bouchard. Then Zach Hyman scores, making it 6-3 from Draisaitl. Then Evander Kane scores, making it 7-3 from McDavid and Desharnais. Then Perron scores, making it 7-4, giving us all some minor form of hopium, and then Nugent Hopkins scores from McDavid. So if you guys weren't keeping track, I said McDavid's name 6 times. And that's because McDavid proved in this game, he just decided he was going to prove to everybody why he was the best player in the entire world. And I gotta say, he beat the Red Wings. Because make no mistake about it, if McDavid wasn't in this game, it wouldn't have been 8-4. I think that if this was a McDavid-less Edmonton Oilers, Detroit probably would have won this game because they played good. Like, there is not a single person on this planet that watched that game and didn't think Detroit played as good as they could against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And, like, because, I mean, I've seen people saying that, but I don't know if you can legitimately say that. I don't know if that is something you can say at me and believe it yourself, because I can't. I cannot genuinely sit here and tell you that Detroit played bad in any of these games, really. This was just a case of Connor McDavid being the best player in the world and proving why he's the best player in the world, because there was absolutely no possible way that Evander Kane goal should have happened, because Seider was on McDavid all night. Like, poor Seider, dude. He was on goal. He was on the ice for like 7 of the goals against. And a lot of people were, per usual, using that to say he's a bust or he's a bad defender, stuff like that, which is just absolutely, completely untrue. And we talked about that in the last episode, but in case you guys missed it, Moritz Seider is the best defenseman on the Red Wings and one of the best defenders in the entire league. He just doesn't get as much coverage as like Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and Adam Fox do, because A, Quinn Hughes can't play defense, B, Cale Makar is probably the best defenseman in the entire world, and C, Adam Fox is an incredible defenseman, is an incredible offensive defenseman with some decent defensive capabilities. And Seider doesn't get any of that praise because he's not on the scorecard nearly as much as any of those guys. Which is, and I'm pretty sure I covered this, but I'm going to go over it again, and I've talked about this numerous times on this podcast already, I'm fairly certain, but as a defensive defenseman, there is nothing in the word defenseman that says you need to be putting up that many points. The word defenseman is literally telling you that you are there to play defense, not be a fucking forward. Now, yes, I know in today's hockey and NHL, you expect production and points and offense from the back end, and that's fair. You know, you've got, obviously there's still more than enough room for your defensive defenseman. Olli Maatta has proved that this season and last, but there is plenty of the whole thing of you being a good defenseman correlates with how many points you have is so dumb. It is so incredibly dumb. Because the whole point of being a defenseman is to make sure you do everything in your power to make sure the puck doesn't go at your goaltender. And Seider's done that better than almost every defenseman in the league. And he's done that while getting the hardest minutes of any defender in the league. The only person close to him is Jake Wallman, who, if you guys didn't know, is his defense partner. So I just don't understand the whole notion behind it, but I've talked about this subject at length. You can go to any other of my podcast episodes, and you will see how much I feel about how passionately I am about this, especially being a defensive defenseman myself. I didn't put up a lot of points when I played. And it doesn't matter because I'm doing my job defensively, and that is my job. My job is not to go up on the rush with the forwards and expect another forward to take my place. That is not my job. So, rant over. We're going to get back into this Edmonton game, and like I said, Connor McDavid proved in this game why he's the best defenseman in the world. Seider, on that 7th goal that Evander Kane netted, Seider did everything in his power to stop McDavid, including taking him to the ground, yet McDavid still got that fucking pass to Evander Kane. If you or me tried to do that, that's not going anywhere near Evander Kane. That's not even going towards the net. Hell, that's probably on Seider's stick if we tried that. Like, it's unfathomable how good Connor McDavid actually is. It's stupid. Connor McDavid's fucking stupid. That's what he is. He is stupid. He is literally, if you just went into NHL 24 went into custom character and just pushed all of the dials up to 100 and then, like, left it. Like, maybe push one or two back so that way it's like 99 so he's not overpowered. But, like, come on, you guys. It's horrible. Anyways, yeah, McDavid's the best player in the world, hands down. But this is also another topic of, was this Lions' worst game? And I don't necessarily know if you can put all of the goals on him. There were some that maybe you wanted him to stop. But, like, he wasn't supposed to be in this game. Husso was supposed to be in this game. He wasn't... He was not the starter of this game. And he definitely probably didn't expect to be coming in 7 minutes into the game. That was, like, he was going into that game lukewarm at best. So, I don't know how much of I can put on him. I think this was literally just a case, and we'll get into this with the Vancouver game as well. This was just a case of Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid, or being Connor McDavid, and just showing why there is not a single player in this league that can stand up to him. Maybe Nathan MacKinnon. But Nathan MacKinnon's not really a Connor McDavid guy. Nathan MacKinnon is just like, he's like a power forward, essentially. So, I don't know. I don't think they played bad in this game. And a lot of people I've talked to don't think they played bad in the game. It's just Connor McDavid's Connor McDavid. That's all I can say about this game. And then we get into the Vancouver game. Oh, by the way, the final score was 8-4 in the Edmonton game, if you guys didn't know that. But then we go to the Vancouver game, where Detroit ends up losing 4-1. And this was another game where Detroit played really well. Now, I know, and we're going to get into it, that horrible 7 minutes of power play time that they just didn't do anything with. But we're going to get into that. Because going into the game, it was obvious that that Vancouver was going to be pissed off. They got grittied on the last time they played this, lost in overtime to a penalty shot. So they were going to come into this game hardcore, and they did. JT Miller scored 7.5 minutes in unassisted. Elias Lindholm scored, and this was, like, the JT Miller one I can't put on Lyon, but the Elias Lindholm one, it's, I don't know if I don't fully put it on Lyon. Should he have stopped it? Probably. Lyon can stop that pretty easily. But at the same time, there was no good reason why Pettersson got that shot off. There's no reason for him to get that shot off. That was the defense. I don't remember who was out at the time. I think it might have been Mata and Ghost. But they let him get so deep into the zone while they were covering him. They didn't pressure him at all. I guarantee you, if whoever the defenseman that was on him, because I can't remember who it was, pressures him just slightly enough, then that's not a goal. I can almost guarantee you that. If he pressures him enough, that gives Lyon more than enough time to prepare for the shot, and that's likely not going in. But instead, what happened, they let him just keep going, and then they let him basically wind up for the shot and take just a brutal snapshot past Lyon that he wasn't prepared for. So it's an instance where, yes, Lyon probably should have had it, but the defense definitely needed to do something there to keep that from happening. They're going into the second period. Nikita Zadorov, he scores his second of the season from Pettersson and Höglander. I thought it was tipped, but no, it was just a really good screen. And I think that this one, even this one was, I think this was, I don't even think it was the same game now that I think about it, but yeah, it was just a nice shot, and he was screened. I think that was Petrie who couldn't get the guy out of the way. I think, don't quote me on that. But then JT Compher, Mr. 877 goals now, gives us some hopium and makes it 3-1 going 14 minutes into the second. Going into the third, Vancouver's up 3-1. We've seen this before, but unfortunately Detroit's not able to complete the comeback with Elias Lindholm scoring from from Elias Pettersson, my bad. It's so fucking confusing. It's 4-1. Vancouver wins 4-1. And this is this wasn't even the same fucking game. Now that I think about it, of the 7 minutes, that was the last game. Now that I think about it, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting my shit mixed up. I just wasn't. Yeah, that's my bad. Sorry. Anyway, so no, there wasn't 7 minutes of brutalness in this game. That was the last Vancouver game, but I don't know why I have that written here. Anyways, yeah, it was another game where Detroit looked good. They looked great in this game, actually. Demko stonewalled the shit out of them, and he's proving why he's one of the best goaltenders in the world. But yeah, he's like, Debrincat should have had like a hat trick in this game. Like, it was like, that's how good Demko was in this game. And they learned they probably couldn't have DeSmith in this game if they wanted to beat the Red Wings. So I don't chalk this game up to Detroit playing bad. I don't chalk this up to bad defense either, because it was just a matter of Vancouver being the best team in the league. And that's just a fact. Like, the Canucks are legit this year. They are, like, I mean, granted, they are basically a one-line team, but they are a one-line team that's carried them to the top of the standings. And you can't really, how do you stop that, how do you stop that legitimately? You can't. You just can't legitimately stop that. And Detroit learned that today, not today, in this game. But this whole thing led me to believe and think about, what's Alex Lyon's limit? Because he's played a lot in January. He's played all but two. I think the stat was, out of the 19 games Detroit's played since whenever it was, Lyon has played in 18 of their last 19 games. Like, he's played in nearly every game. The only one he didn't play in was the one that it was the Toronto game. Or I guess it would be 18 out of 20 now, because Reimer played against Toronto and then he played against Calgary, and then didn't go out at all. But yeah, Lyon has played a lot of games, and it's starting to show a bit, I think. But I think Lyon has the right mentality to not let it get to him, and realize that, okay, this team is relying on me to be what I have been all season, and I cannot let this get to me. And him being out for the game in Calgary definitely helped, and Reimer showing that he can take over the net from time to time definitely helped. But this game was the definition of the game was closer than the score shows. Lyon didn't necessarily play bad. The defense was pretty strong the entire most of the game, except for that Lindholm goal. The offense was there, but they couldn't get past Demko. Like, it was just a plethora of the hockey gods frowning upon Detroit. So, but then all is made right in the world when we go into Calgary, and oh boy, was this a fun game to watch. Like, not that Edmonton and Vancouver weren't fun games to watch. I enjoyed watching them, even though Detroit was getting the shit kicked out of them. But boy, was this such a fun game to watch, because this was a game where you could make arguments that neither team was the better team in this game. Like, these teams seemed not evenly matched, because I think that takes away from what Detroit did a bit. But this was a team of, we need to retool, versus a team of, we're coming out of a rebuild. Like, it's definitely it was definitely fun to watch, and it was even better that Detroit won 5-0, so we're going to get into it real quick. Patrick Kane scores his 9th of the season from Seider and Fabry. Seider was really able to get some offense going in these last few games, especially in this one. He had 2 assists. There was a power play goal. Beautiful. Fabry won the face-off, got it back to Seider, who gave it to Kane, one-timer from the blue line, right past Markstrom. Markstrom didn't have a good game today. Didn't have a good game either. He did not look like the goaltender that he was billed as going into the game. And it wasn't entirely his fault, mind you. The Flames just didn't look... They looked almost not defeated because they were very much on the Red Wings for a lot of this game. But they looked like they were a bit dissuaded from getting absolutely shit kicked by San Jose. But we're going to get into that later. So after that, JT Compher, literally like a minute later, he scores from Raymond and Debrincat. Beautiful feed from Raymond, who did most of the work on this, and Compher made no mistake and buried it. Markstrom wasn't happy about that one. He was actually pretty upset about that one. But going into the second, it's 2-0 Detroit. And then 5 minutes in on the power play, there were a lot of penalties in this game. Like, holy shit, were there so many penalties in this game. There were 10 penalties in total in this game. So on the power play, Larkin gets it from Kane. Another beautiful feed from Kane. Kane just has this way of, like, it's almost like he's got future sight, almost. Like, I'm convinced he's got, like, clairvoyance or something, because he seems to know what's going to happen while he's got the puck. And it's incredible to watch him play, too, because whenever he gets the puck, every team that he's against just doesn't know what to do. They're dumbfounded because they've got this notion in the back of his head, like, okay, this is Patrick Kane. He's one of, if not the best playmaker in the entire history of the NHL, and we don't know what he's going to do. Do we pressure him? Well, if we pressure him, then he's going to make a move to somebody to get the pressure off of him, and then they're just going to give him the puck right back. It's just going to be an endless cycle, and then somebody's going to be out of position, and then boom, score. Or do we just sit here and wait and try to block the pass that he's going to make? But if we fail, it is so incredible watching him just confuse the shit out of guys, when he's literally just standing there stick handling. And you can see his brain going to work. His brain is working a million miles an hour while his body's doing the same thing. It is so incredible to watch him work. So he gets it he throws it right to Larkin. Larkin banks it in on the power play. Beautiful setup and goal. And then Perron, not even a minute later, gets his 12th of the season from Kopp and Veleno. That was a beautiful play as well. And then probably the best play of the game, once again, from Lucas Raymond, who takes it from the blue line, goes in. I think he did it from the Wings blue line. Goes into the zone, tries to break through the defense, can't break through the defense, gets the puck back in the corner, goes around the world once. Calgary's defense just stood there. Markstrom got pulled, by the way, after the Perron goal and Vladar was in. Calgary's defense just stood there and let him do whatever the fuck he wanted to. Goes in, shoots it, beats Vladar clean. Beautiful play. And fucking Raymond with another goal of the year contender for the Red Wings. Like, it is, like, this, he's good, you guys. He's just good. And while his goal scoring hasn't been there, the dude is killing it on the assists. Like, he's becoming an incredible playmaker. He's got, 29 assists on the season now, 44 points. He's on pace for, 70-something points this season. So, it's, I made the comparison a little bit that he could be a Perron replacement, but that's the minimum of what he could be. I think that Lucas Raymond has the potential to be a Patrick Kane. I genuinely think he has that ability. Lucas Raymond has an incredibly underrated playmaking ability, and people don't understand that. They look at the goals and think, oh, he's not scoring, so it was a wrong decision to take him in the top 10 in that draft. But when you look at his assists, you can tell he's on the score sheet a lot. Whenever there's a goal and Raymond's out on the ice for it, there's almost a 100% chance he was involved somehow, some way. Whether it was a primary, a secondary assist, or if it was just the work he put in on the boards in a puck battle to get it back to the defense and stuff happened from there and he doesn't show up on the score sheet. Raymond has evolved this season, and he's only, 21, 22? He's going to get so much better, and it's so fun to watch. And on top of that, James Reimer, like, is this a redemption tour? I doubt it, because he's likely not going to play again for another 5 games. But he looked good. Like, he was shaky at the start of the first period, let up some bad rebounds, as he does. Wasn't tracking the puck incredibly well, but he settled in, got confident as shit in the net, and he made some incredible saves that kept this shutout alive for him, and kept Detroit on. He saved Detroit. He saved the team a few times, and he just looked good. He looked like the James Reimer of old. Like, he looked like the James Reimer that Toronto drafted. He looked like the James Reimer that he was billed as, and he just looked good. I can't say anything else. He just looked good. Granted, he did almost give himself fucking concussion in like the last minute and a half of the game, but yeah, he looked good. And another thing that I think contributed to the game was Lalonde's line blending. When I saw the lines and seen that he split up the Rasmussen, Kopp, Fischer line, and then put Rasmussen on the top line with Debrincat and Larkin, put Perron on the third line, and then had Fischer centering the bottom line with Fabry and Sprong, I think it was. Like, it was interesting, because it just looked like Lalonde, like he did throw it in a blender and then just threw it at the wall, and whatever stuck. Like, and just hoped it would stick, essentially. Because I looked at it and I'm like, Veleno on the wing and Fischer on center? Like, that doesn't make much sense. Why would you put Rasmussen on the top line and then have Larkin, Comfer, Kane, and I actually think Fabry was on the second line, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that real quick. I'm not 100% sure on that. There it is. No, okay, it was, so the lines were Larkin, Kane, Rasmussen, which was weird. Comfer, Raymond, Debrincat, Kopp, Perron, Veleno, Fischer, Sprong, Fabry. So, yeah, those were lines. I looked at that and I'm like, what in the actual flying fuck is Lalonde thinking? Why would you put top line Rasmussen is good. Like, even top line Rasmussen's not top line caliber, I don't think. But he looked good in this game, and he made some room for Larkin and Kane. But I don't think he needs to be on the top line with them. I think that top line needs to be either Larkin, Kane, Debrincat, or Larkin, Debrincat, Raymond, or Larkin, Kane, Raymond, I think would be good. But I don't think it needs to be Rasmussen. Rasmussen's a good middle six guy. But, yeah, the only thing I think of is that they threw him on there in case they needed another center. Because who are you going to throw in there? Because realistically, out of the top 6, who are you going to throw in the middle that can legitimately win a face-off? Who's normally in the top 6, so you take out Rasmussen, put in Perron. Larkin and Comfer really are the only 2 centers there. I think Debrincat's taken some face-offs this year. Raymond's taken a few face-offs, but, there's really nobody else on there that you can confidently say could take face-offs, so maybe that was their thinking. I don't know, but, and granted it worked. I don't know if it was just because of the line changes, or if it was because of pure luck or the hockey gods or whatever. I don't know how or why they worked, but they worked. It's one way or another, and you can't be mad at the outcome. So that, with a strong power play and Reimer's shutout, made this game fantastic. But what made this game god tier, what made this game one of the greatest games this season, was the road octopus on the ice. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, in Calgary's own barn, there was an octopus thrown on the ice, and boy, was that fantastic to see. Now, I know who threw it. If you guys follow the Wingfield podcast, it was one of their patrons and followers and whatnot. They They threw it on the ice. There's a video of it on the Wingmill Podcast at Wingmill Pod if you guys wanted to check them out. I highly recommend them. But there's a video up on their Twitter that was taken of the culprit, I guess you could say. And I say culprit because he was put in the back of a police van afterwards. And while that was all happening, he had to tell Calgary's security the whole history of Detroit and the octopus and what it signifies. And at the end of the day, he got away with a $250 ticket and a potential to be banned from Calgary's barn for 3 years. And boy, oh boy, was this fantastic to see. Like, even Steve Dangle tweeted about it. Like, it was actually a pretty big deal that there was an octopus thrown on the ice in Calgary. Like, it was incredible to see. Like, a lot of people talk, like, I think the Steve Dangle podcast talked about it a little while ago about how many teams can go on the road to, like, California and whatnot and then have hats thrown on the ice for a hat trick for their team. Because it happened with Toronto when Austin Matthews scored a hat trick against, like, LA or San Jose or some West Coast team. And it was, none of them mentioned Detroit, which is interesting to me because aside from Toronto, Detroit's got probably the biggest fan base. Like, Detroit's got, I won't say the biggest because Montreal's pretty high up there and Edmonton as well. But, like, most of the Canadian teams have a really big following, but that's just in Canada. Like, if you go to, like, not just in Canada, because I know the Leafs have the biggest fan base in the world. Like, there's fans all over the world, literally. So, it's, like, but in terms of fan bases, I don't know how you can ignore Detroit's, like, global impact as well. Because, I mean, let's face it, Detroit was one of the front runners of, sorry if you guys can hear in the background, that's my heater, because it's gotten insanely fucking cold at my place. But I don't know how you can say Detroit, you can ignore Detroit when they were one of the leaders, legitimately one, if not the leader in the league for European talent. Like, how many other teams in the league were willing to take shots at Swedish players, Russian players, just a bunch of Europeans? How many teams can you say were able to do that, were doing that and willing to do that in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s? Like, you just can't say that there was really any team that took as many swings than Detroit did and many shots. So having nobody acknowledge how big Detroit's fan base is, it's just indicative of a larger situation in that, the Red Wings have been disrespected for a while. And I mean, in the last, 7-8 years, fairly so, because they've sucked. But even now, as they're a good team that has the potential to make the playoffs, they're in a playoff spot right now, but we'll get into that talk. It is wild that people still refuse to give Detroit their dues. And I can understand hesitation, even from inside the fan base. There's hesitation because we've seen this before. Like, we were at this point last year that right around, the All-Star break, stuff like that, where Detroit was in a playoff spot. They were in the second wild card spot. And then, the two games in Edmonton and the Tampa Bay game, which I really think is what spiraled everything, that killed the season. And then we were all disappointed because we were all like, is this finally the year that Detroit gets to make the playoffs? They can finally end the playoff drought. And nope, it was ruined. So it is wild to see that. And I hope that stuff like this happens more. And people start to finally realize that, yes, Detroit is here. Detroit, no matter how bad they are, still have one of the biggest and most dedicated fan bases in the entire world. And and to stop disrespecting it. Like, just stop. There is no reason to. So that is the Detroit Red Wings week in review. Like I said, all good games is on the Detroit side. It was just when it comes to Edmonton and Vancouver. Edmonton has the best hockey player in the world, and Vancouver is one of the best is literally the best team in the league right now. So no matter how good Detroit played, it was going to be a long shot for them to win. But some of the takeaways from this week was not Evander Kane, Jesus Christ. Patrick Kane, he came in from an injury, which wasn't hip-related, obviously, before the All-Star break. He came in after the All-Star break and has made an immediate impact on the team again. Since coming back, he had an assist in Vancouver, an assist in Edmonton, an assist in the second goal, and an assist in the Edmonton game. My bad. An assist in this last Vancouver game, and a goal and an assist in the Calgary game yesterday. And he has, that's 6 points in his last 4 games. How can you be upset with that? And I keep going back to the Mike Gould article that he put out saying how the Kane signing was, as he expected, bad for the Red Wings. And he posted that, he wrote that and put it out right as Detroit was, in Detroit's December slump. And it was wild to me because, the dude, he's an Arizona and Calgary guy, if I remember correctly. What is he doing talking about Detroit and Patrick Kane? And the thing to that is he hates Patrick Kane and the Blackhawks. He cannot stand them. And so Detroit is catching strays for it because of it. And he's been real quiet as of late from what I know. I don't know. I don't follow him on Twitter at all. Never did in the first place. He just popped up on my feed because everybody else that I follow on Twitter, was retweeting that stuff. So I keep going back to that, and then I keep looking, and I'm like, how is that even possible? The dude's got 22 points in 23 games already. He's like a point per game. And we were all concerned on if he was going to be able to return to, a quarter of his form. What we're seeing here is Patrick Kane in his, not young form, but we're seeing Patrick Kane in Patrick Kane form. Not young Patrick Kane form, but just Patrick Kane form. And it's working out for Detroit. I don't know what else you want anybody to say. He's good. He's Patrick motherfucking Kane. He's got the second most points out of any American born player in the history of the NHL. There's a greater than 0 chance that he surpasses Mike Modano. It's incredible. He got his 900th assist or something like that. It was wild. So Patrick Kane has been a revelation for this team, and definitely something this team needed to get things going and keep the playoff hopes alive this season. Another thing that helped keep Detroit's playoff hopes alive is Alex Lyon, obviously. And I bring up Alex Lyon even though we talked about him a little bit, and that is Lyon needs a fucking break. The last game that obviously he got a break against Calgary with Reimer playing, but he needs legitimate help. Lyon is fantastic. He's a beautiful human being with nothing behind his eyes, but there's nothing going on behind those eyes in between those ears. I'm convinced he just goes with life, and I love it. But he needs another goaltender behind him that can step in and switch out 1A, 1B with him. Do I think he needs it? Probably not. But it would be good for him to not have to play this many games in a row. Like I said, he played 18 of their last 20 or something like that. He's played in 18 of the last 20. And that is not the recipe to get to, even if you make the playoffs, to sustain your pressure in the playoffs. You just can't do that. You need in the playoffs, yes, you need the hot goaltender. We've seen that with Bobrovsky last season. We've seen it with Adin Hill. You do really need and want that one goaltender that just makes saves. But we've also seen that you need that second goaltender that can come in for relief once or twice in the round. Like, if it goes more than 4 games, then yeah, you definitely need that guy who can go in and take over, game 5 or something like that. I guess it depends on the record too. But you're just not going to make it with one single goalie. It's like you're not going to win the cup with 2 or 3 players on your team. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, obviously Bobrovsky did that last season, and you can legitimately make a run at the cup with just one goaltender. Teams have done it in the past. Detroit, for example. But in today's NHL, I do genuinely think in order to win it, you need a second goaltender. And that's not even just because, like, ride the hot hand in the playoffs, like every team does. But if you're going to do that, you need to be prepared for the possibility they get injured and worn out. And they're going to need at least a game, like probably a game to relax and, recuperate. So, like I said, we've seen it with Florida last season. Lyon went into the playoffs, and I think he played 2 or 3 games in the playoffs. I think he played 2 games in the playoffs, and then, Bobrovsky came in, went God mode, and killed everybody up until the Stanley Cup, where he just couldn't. We seen it with Boston last year as well in that same round. Olmark was in, he was injured, but, they didn't put Swayman in, and I think if they put Swayman in, they would have beaten Florida. So, that's just my 2 cents. I do understand that you can make a really deep run and potentially win the cup with a really hot goaltender, but I just don't think it's a smart move, because then you're going to also be dealing with fatigue and stuff like that. Like, you don't get nearly as much time off, so you don't want your goaltender going into next season battered up and bruised and stuff like that, and still recuperating from playing 16 fucking games in a row. Like, it's something to think about. Do I think Husso's that guy? Maybe. Do I think Reimer's that guy? Probably not. But it's just, food for thought, essentially. And one thing that Detroit needs, another thing that Detroit needs to get going is Debrincat. Alex Debrincat has been snake-bitten hardcore. And it sucks because we all know what he's about. We all know what he's capable of. He's got 46 points on the season. He's on pace for the same amount as Dylan Larkin. And it's, he has, he's put in, not that he's not putting up points. Granted, he does only have, 3 points in his last 5 games. So, it's still positive, but boy, does he need to get his snake bitten hard. Like I said, in that Vancouver game and in the Calgary game, he should have had like 3 or 4 goals in the Edmonton game, and then in Calgary he got robbed 2 or 3 times. Like, it's just, I think he hit the post once as well. Like, it's sad to see, because that we all know what he is. We know he has the ability to score 40 goals in a season. He's done it twice in his life. He's done it twice in his career. He's at minimum a 30 goal scorer, and it's just he just can't get it going for whatever reason. Now, I do think that part of that is because he's put on a line with Larkin and Raymond, or Larkin and Braun, stuff like that. I think if you want to get him going, you've got to put him on there with Kane. You've got to put him out there with Kane. That's just something you have to do if you want to get him going more, because he and Kane know each other, and Kane has had the ability to allow anybody to score. We've seen that. So get Kane and Debrincat back together. Put him on the second line with fucking Raymond and Perron, or hell, with Raymond and Comfer, I should say. Put them on the top line with Larkin. Put them on the second line with Comfer. Just put them on a line together. I don't even care if they're on the fucking 4th line with Joe Veleno or Christian Fischer centering them. Just put them on a line together, please, for Christ's sake. That was one of the biggest reasons you brought Patrick Kane here, is because of his connection with Debrincat. So just do it. Just do it. But with that all said, Detroit still holds the second wild card spot. They're up on New Jersey by 2 points. New Jersey gained a good amount of ground with Detroit losing those 2 games to Vancouver and Edmonton. And obviously the Devils beat Philadelphia because we can't rely on Philadelphia to do fucking anything. So the Devils beat Philadelphia. Now the good news is, if New Jersey gets going, there's a solid chance that they pass Philadelphia. So all Detroit has to do is get past Philadelphia. And Philadelphia has, they've been good, but they've been on and off, very on and off. You don't know what team you're going to get. Well, you kind of do, but you kind of don't know what team you're going to get. And I think it's very likely that Philadelphia makes the playoffs this season, but they're not a cup team, so I can see them falling out of the 3rd spot if New Jersey gets going. And then that would drop. All Detroit has to do is surpass Philadelphia's points. Like, they were at that for a while before the All-Star break. They were ahead of Philadelphia by 4 points or something like that. Then Philadelphia came back and went on a 5-game win streak or some shit like that. So, it's a tight race in the East, as we all predicted. As of right now, behind Detroit, because Toronto just overtook Tampa Bay in the standings, so Tampa Bay is now the first wild card spot with 65 points. Detroit has 62. New Jersey's right behind them with 60. The Islanders are behind them with 58. Capitals right behind them with 56. Penguins with 55. Buffalo 52. Montreal 52. Buffalo and Montreal are tied. That's so fucking stupid to think about. Ottawa with 46. Columbus with 44. Obviously, Columbus fired their general manager. It was very much long overdue, and I'm not really going to get into that because that topic's been beat to death by everybody. Just know it was long overdue, and maybe this gets Columbus something. I don't know. But yeah. Now we're going to get into the trade deadline. The trade deadline is coming up, obviously. And there's a lot of talk about it and potential trade chips for each team and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about Detroit for a second. And the first thing I want to talk about, which is what a lot of people are talking about, Jonatan Berggren. Does he stay or does he go? Berggren has made no secret that he believes he should be in the NHL. And there is not a single Red Wings fan that I think will tell you that he doesn't deserve to be in the NHL. As of right now, Jonatan Berggren has 16 goals, 22 assists, 38 points in 36 games with the AHL's Grand Rapids Griffins. He's on pace for 28 goals, 39 assists, 67 points in 63 games. That is a bit fucking insane. If anybody says he doesn't belong in the NHL, they are stupid. So, what do you do with him? Do you trade him? Do you keep him? I personally, and I think everybody else, would love for Berggren to stay here. But he's being wasted in the AHL, and if he wants to play in the NHL, there's a good shot that he requests a trade from Detroit and goes to not even just a contender, maybe just like a Montreal or an Anaheim and gets played, And Berggren, he's not going to be a top 6 guy ever, but he's a really good middle 6 guy who has patience and he's a playmaker who also knows how to get into the trash areas. He has scored, if you look at his season last year, he had I think it was 15 goals? Yeah, he had 15 goals last season, and most of those were from the red line from the deep red line. And that was his MO. He was always quiet and a guy that teams would forget to cover. Rebounds came out, he would take it, dip it in behind the goaltender and score. That was what he did, and he was really good at it. But I can see a world in a fairly likely world where Berggren is in a Red Wing, and that's just business, Do I want Jonatan Berggren to be a Red Wing? Yes, I do. But everybody has a price, and if Berggren wants to play in the NHL and Detroit doesn't have the room for him because of their depth, and they haven't had nearly as many injuries as I think they thought they would, then, there's a little greater than zero chance that Berggren gets moved to somewhere for assets or at the trade deadline for somebody who Detroit could possibly extend as well. So, Because personally, if you ask me, I don't think Detroit makes any moves. I don't think Steve Yzerman's making any moves at the deadline. And that's just something like I can see him moving Berggren for draft picks. Because Detroit's not fully out of that rebuild yet. They are moving into that direction fairly quickly, but I don't believe they're fully out of it yet. And moving Berggren to somebody for him to play in the NHL and get, futures back, it's a strong possibility. Now, what's Berggren worth? I don't think he's worth more than a second-round pick, but, he might not even... No, I think Berggren's worth a second-round pick. And even then, it could be quite a few picks for Berggren. So I don't know what his full worth is. I'm not an NHL scout or a general manager for good reason. But, Berggren could bring back a decent little payday for Detroit. And on top of that, the names that people are throwing out there for Detroit to trade with, because everybody's throwing these names out there. One of them, because their team is throwing their names out there. Noah Hanifin. He plays for Calgary. He's got 9 goals, 21 assists, 30 points with a +10 this season. And he's a guy that Calgary has been saying, oh, we're looking to trade him. Oh, no, wait, we might still resign. Like, Calgary is so fucking bad at this whole deception thing. So he is a solid... He's a guy. Like, he's a good guy. Obviously, he shoots left-handed. And he's a good defenseman, but that's the problem with Hanifin and Tanev, because they are defensemen, and Detroit's got a lot of defensemen, and most of the defensemen you can't move. The only defenseman you can really easily move is Olimata, and you don't want to move Olimata, especially not going into the playoffs, because going into the playoffs you want a stay-at-home defenseman. So what do you do there? And even then, Detroit, like, they've got such depth on both forward and defense that it's difficult to make any moves whether you wanted to or not. And I don't think Hanifin or Tanev are the guys, because Tanev is 35, 34. Noah Hanifin is in his 30s as well. No, he's 27. My bad. He's the same age as Larkin. Whoops. But maybe Hanifin. But the caveat is these guys have to come with extensions following. And I don't think that Steve Yzerman is looking for any of these guys, realistically. Because, if you look at the blue line, you've still got Wallman for another two years after the season. You're going to have Sider for likely 8 years. You've still got Schrott for another 2 years after this season. You've got Olimata for another year after this season. You've got Justin Hall for another 2 years after this season. You've got Jeff Petrie for another year after this season. Like, the only player on this team that's likely not going to be here next season on the blue line is Shane Gostisbehere. So, I don't know what you do there, if anything, and I don't think he's going to do anything. So, that's my take on the trade deadline for Detroit. Let me know what you guys think on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at @the_Mexicanadian, and follow the podcast at RORBpod. Sorry for the complicated handle, but for whatever reason, Red Orange Blue Pod was already taken somehow. Either that or it was too long. I think it was too long. Don't know, don't care. Don't worry, I've double checked. There is no other podcast that I know of that is also called the Red Orange Blue Podcast. And if there is, fuck them, it's mine now. So with that being said, we're gonna get into this episode's Prospect Report. And if you guys want to vote on the Prospect Report, I do a poll every Friday before the podcast, and I put up 4 prospects in Detroit's prospect pool who you guys can vote on for me to talk to. And this one is Dmitri Buchelnikov. Dmitri Buchelnikov, he was drafted in 2022, second round, his second rounder, 52nd overall in 2022 from Detroit, and he's 20 years old, left wing, 5'10", shoots right, and Russian. That's all you need to know about him. No, he is a guy that a lot of fans look at as a potential scoring threat. Now, he's not going to be a superstar by any means whatsoever, but he's definitely a guy who can play top to middle 6 minutes and be a threat. Like, he could be another Daniel Sprong. And we've seen what Daniel Sprong has done for Detroit this season. He's another guy that I hope Detroit re-signs. But that's, end of season content. But yeah, he's currently got in his season this year a lot of points. He's got in total, I'm trying to do the math here because he's played in 3 different leagues. So he's got like 40-something points, 30-something points. Yeah, 30-something points. Right now he plays in the KHL, Admiral Vladivostok. I think that's how you say it. He's on loan from St. Petersburg. Where currently in the Vladivostok loan, he's got 13 goals, 16 assists, 29 points in 52 games. He's projected to have 14 goals, 17 assists, 31 points in 55 games. So he's projected to have, well, that makes sense because that season's almost over, it looks like. But yeah, it's he's definitely a guy that you should keep your eye on. He's fast and he has the ability to bounce off of his teammates, meaning he can mesh well with his line mates, and he's flashy. He's a flashy offensive first guy. What do you expect? So he definitely looks like a guy that Detroit is probably looking at, but obviously with everything that's going on in Russia, like one of the best prospects from last season's draft, 2023 draft, Matvei Michkov, he isn't playing in the league right now, and a lot of it has to do with everything going in Russia. Russian players are so hard to scout nowadays that it's almost like you're gonna 100% start seeing a dip in Russian players in the league for a little bit, and that's because A, they're hard to scout, and B, when they are scouted and drafted, they're very difficult to get out of the country. So yeah, it sucks what's going on over there, but yeah, Dmitri Buchelnikov, definitely a guy I can see the Red Wings trying to get over here and playing with the team. But it all just depends on what he wants to do, because he's not signed with the Wings. He's not signed with the Red Wings, and there's still some time to sign him, but it's just a matter of if Detroit wants to go through the trouble of trying to get him over here from Russia. So that's Dmitri Buchelnikov. Let's get into some NHL news, and the first one is Detroit and Columbus was officially confirmed for a 2025 Stadium Series game, and it's going to be at the where Ohio State plays their football team. The Shoe, I think, is what it's called. I don't know. I don't care about Ohio State. I'm a Michigan fan. Fuck Ohio State. But yeah, this is fantastic because Detroit hasn't had a stadium game since 2014, I believe, where they took on Chicago, and that was the most watched Stadium Series game in NHL history, I believe, if not one of the most. And that's great. It's great for Detroit. It's great for Columbus. Columbus needs something to get them relevant again, and this could do it. So a lot of people have been talking about the jerseys, and it's been thrown around a lot that they should go with a U of M versus Ohio State vibe, but then you're basically just switching jersey colors essentially, so it wouldn't look right. But Detroit has had a very good history with their stadium games and outdoor games and winter classics and whatnot. The Barber Pole is one of my favorite in the history of the Red Wings. And then, the Centennial is fantastic. Detroit, I think the only bad Detroit jersey, well, there's two, and it's their reverse retros. They completely whiffed on the fucking mark for their first series of reverse retros, which was just white. And then last season's was better, but it was still, you could easily mistake it for Chicago's. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with, and I'm excited to watch an outdoor game for Detroit. They definitely deserve it, being one of the biggest fan bases and markets in the entire league. And on top of that, the Islanders are set to host the 2026 All-Star Game. You're probably wondering, what about the 2025 All-Star Game? Why has anybody done that? Well, you got the Four Nations Tournament coming up next year, and that's what's replacing the All-Star Weekend. And so in 2026, we're going to get the Islanders hosting the All-Star Game, And it's interesting because this is also the year that it's predicted and reported that the NHL will be returning to the Olympics. So it's going to be interesting to see how they figure that out. Because are they just literally going to do just the weekend for the All-Star game? Like they're going to pause the league on the weekend for the All-Star game and then go into it so that way they, they're not taking any more time than they need to away from the league for the Olympics, because they're going to have to miss a week, stop the league for like a full week at least for the Olympics. So it's interesting to see there, but the Islanders are going to host 2026 All-Star Game. I know Detroit fans really want one, but it was rumored and reported that two of the teams that are really fighting to get to host the All-Star Game in 2027 is Detroit and Edmonton. And I hope they swing Detroit's way. Like, I don't care about the All-Star Game at all, but Detroit deserves something like that. They were pretty much promised one when the LCA was built. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well. But speaking of the LCA, the PWHL is coming to Motown on March 16th. Yeah, March 16th, the PWHL is going to be playing a game at Little Caesars Arena. It's going to be Boston versus Ottawa, and you cannot tell me that the PWHL people who are scheduling these games didn't know what they were doing. You're throwing a Boston and an Ottawa team into a Detroit arena. Like, that's just insane, but I commend you for it. And I will be at this game. Me, my dad, my brother-in-law, and sister are all going to be at this game. And we're pumped for it because I've been watching not a lot of the PWHL. When it first started, I was watching pretty much all the games, but I kind of petered off for a little bit, and then I went back to watching it like 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm excited for it because these girls are fucking vicious, and it is fantastic to watch. So I'm excited for that as well. And now something that's not hockey related, we got Detroit Tigers news because the spring training has started, if I'm remembering correctly. Spring training itself is starting up, and it is going to be fun to have baseball back. I've never been a major baseball guy, and now with this podcast, obviously, I got to watch the games and stuff like that. But I've always been a Tigers guy. I've tuned into a game here and there last season, but the problem with that was that they were really bad. And this year is looking to be a bit different. I don't know how different, but their division is still incredibly fucking weak. So it's possible that they do something. They've made some moves. They acquired Blake Dickerson from the Padres for $500,000 of international bonus pool money. I don't know if that moves the needle or not. I'm not familiar with his game or who he is or if he even exists. He could be fake for all I know. But their first game, spring training game, is going to be against the Yankees on the 24th of February, actually. This month is going to be their first game. So this Saturday is going to be their first spring training game. And then they've got like 5 more games after that. So it'll be fun to watch. I don't know what their expectations are, really. I think their expectations, for the most part, are going to be hanging in there with Minnesota, which isn't a high bar to set realistically, but I think they could do it. They've got some solid young guys that are coming up and have a lot of potential. And I think that with the Lions and the Red Wings playing better, Detroit in itself is becoming a more desirable place to play for players. So there is, always the chance of trades and free agent signings, stuff like that. Free agent signings not really anymore because spring training started up, but there is always the possibility for trades and whatnot. And with Detroit sports teams just 2 of Detroit sports teams becoming good again, there's a lot of players from other leagues are going to want to start to come here and play for the city of Detroit. So that's really all I've got for Detroit Tigers news. There's not a lot for me to talk about because they've signed like 85 different guys to minor league contracts for spring training. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what how the Tigers do this season, how spring training comes up for them. And Detroit is going to be interesting to see how the playoff race climaxes. because they've got at least 2 other teams on their ass right now that could legitimately overtake them. So it's going to be it's fun for Detroit sports. I say that at the end of every episode, but that's because it is fun for Detroit sports right now, and it's going to be fun to continue watching them in the future. So that being said, I want to thank you guys all so much for tuning into this episode of the Red, Orange, Blue podcast. I am your host, as always, the Mexanadian, and I will see you guys in the next goddamn motherfucking episode. Take care, everybody. Adios.